had a bachelor's degree and was the first in his tribe to get a bachelor's degree, the Comanche tribe. And he earned a master's also. And so he had experience in higher education. So that was, a real support for us. So we, as his children, kind of followed his example. So we were kind of, expected to go on to higher education. But, money was an issue, just like it is for many Native students right now. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of scholarships or fellowships available. They were there, but they were far in between. And so we had to go to college. I didn't really have a choice of where to go to college. I had brothers that were already in college, and so I had to attend the same college because it cut down on the cost of going to school. So if we all pooled our resources together and we all lived together, then that would be a cheaper way to go. And then we had to go to college where we could pay in-state tuition. So, all of these things were a part of our decision to where we could go to school. So, and my parents, always had to kind of borrow money and to keep us in school, because it was hard when you had several siblings in school and college at the same time. Once, one of my brothers, because I have 5 older brothers. So once they, kind of got graduated and went and started their careers, a lot of times they ended up having to help my parents to pay for college for the rest of us that were still there. So, that family support was very important. So really, I didn't have, through my undergraduate years, I didn't really have any financial aid except for, what our family could pay for. And then what my brothers, when they went to work, could help us with. So I really didn't have any financial help until, graduate school. And at that time, I did have some fellowships. I applied for some fellowships and did receive some of those. And then, I had a tuition waiver. But yet at the same time, as many of you know, financial aid doesn't necessarily pay for everything in college. You still have, food to pay for, you have rent if you're renting, you have car expenses, you have gas, you have all of these things. And sometimes that financial aid does not, cover that. So I had to work too when I was in higher education. So I worked either full-time or part-time, to pay for my graduate years. And then, of course, my parents always sent, what they could to help us. So we always said we got these care packages from our family to help us, so that was always appreciated. But at the time that I was here, I got my master's at the University of New Mexico and my PhD here at the University of Arizona. But during that time, I was one of the only Native students in college, whether it was undergrad school or it was graduate school. There just wasn't a lot of Native students. And usually, we all knew each other because there were so few of us. So, in most classes I had, I was the only Native student there. And so, there wasn't always a Native perspective that was presented in these classes at that time. And, being the only Native, sometimes, people expected you to speak for all Natives, which you can't do. So that was something that you had to deal with. But I also had to deal with, the fact that there was racism there. People had prejudice against people of color. There were gender issues, being a woman in higher education at that time. I remember being in undergrad chemistry class, and my lab instructor telling me that women really didn't belong in chemistry. So, those kinds of things were verbally said to you. And so, you had to deal with them. But of course, my parents always told us that, that it wasn't going to always be easy. So you always, knew these kind of things might happen, but it also, I had the strong support of my family. So when they did happen and I needed to talk to somebody, they were there. But usually, the way I was raised, when these things happened, they became a challenge for me, and I always tried to find ways to deal with them or overcome them. So, my emotional and mental support really came from my family. We didn't, there wasn't a lot of services for Native students at that time. I think at the University of Arizona. And so, and there wasn't a lot of others out there that were Native. And then, all my career as an education, I went through, I first started out in bureau schools. I went to K through 6th grade in a bureau school. I went through 7th grade through high school at a mission school for Native students. So all of my education up to the college was always with Native students, predominantly Native students. And so I really, didn't have that experience in a white institution with non-Natives until I went to my undergraduate years. So, these, all of these things, I think, some of these might be something that you've experienced or that we see still happening with Native students in their higher educational experience. Some we've come a long ways and some things have improved, but some things are still there. So, when I look at the experiences of Native students in college, we have to remember that, their experiences vary. And there's probably no two experiences that are the same because, we're all individuals. Things affect us in different ways. But yet, there's commonalities when you read, and I'm sure you've been reading the literature, there's some commonalities that continue to be there and continue to be some challenges for Native students. But of course, how we deal with them and how we approach them, is kind of depends on our backgrounds and our tribal backgrounds. A lot of our tribal values and things that we've been taught, help us to deal with some of the things that we face. And that varies, what Comanche values may be a lot different from Navajo values, but it just really emphasizes that diversity of our tribes. But another thing that we're seeing currently is that's disturbing, at least, it's disturbing to us that are concerned about Natives in higher education is that since 2010, we're seeing a decrease in the enrollment of Native students in higher education. And that is disturbing, because we do, want to see more students earn degrees and contribute in different ways to their Native communities and to Native affairs in general. Why this is happening, could be many reasons. Maybe students are looking at different career options. There's always been this thing where Native males sometimes have gone to the military because that's kind of a part of their family traditions and that warrior ethic that they have. So, there might be reasons for this, but it also could be based upon, how the data is tabulated. How do we classify Native students? And that has been an issue, because now there's that category of Native only and Native with other groups. So how, these numbers could be reflecting that. So, it's something that we need to look at and kind of follow, because, we hopefully that number will increase. But, recently it could be because of our COVID thing. I know that during COVID, the first year after COVID, we came back, some of our enrollments were low in AIS, but now they're increasing again. So, it could be that impact too. But another thing that we know is that, of course, there's more females than male students in higher education, and that's across the board in all groups. There seems to be, more, and that's reflected with Native students too. It's usually around, 60-40, 60% Native women and 40 males. But, we know that when Native people look at education, many Native people look at education, education is seen as a means to the betterment of not just that individual that's getting the degree, but it's also for their families, it's for their tribal nations, it's for their society as at large, and we can, say that's why we say, that education really is contributing to nation building or rebuilding, because in order for our tribes to rebuild and to build, they need educated people, directly or indirectly involved with nation building. But we also know that, when you look at the literature, that we still have that Native students that are in higher education right now really have, they're less likely to have a family member that attended college. All right, that's, we're still, there's increase in number of second generation, even third graders, but still the majority are still first generation. So, these are some of the things that will affect the experiences that you have. In one report, like say 42% of first-time, full-time Native students attending four-year institutions, and the majority of our students go to public four-year institutions, as opposed, to compared to private institutions. But, it's also taking, them around 6 years to complete. 42% Native students that entered in 2019 completed, compared to overall non-natives at 64%. So there's some room for growth there. We need to work on that. But also, of the 2 million bachelor's degrees that were earned in 2019 and 20, a little over 9,000 of those went to Native students. So that's, that's really a low percentage. And so something that, we hope that will change and increase. If you have any questions, you can pose them. Otherwise I just get carried away in talking sometimes. So if you have any comments or questions. Okay, so another thing that we know, that in fall 2020, Native students made up 0.6% of all post-secondary enrollment. That means at all levels of education beyond high school. 22% are 18 to 24-year-olds. 22% of them were enrolled in college. That's not even a fourth of our population in that age group. Again, like I said earlier, since 2010, we've seen a decrease in enrollment of Native students. In 2010, we had 179,000. Now we have 123. And that's a decrease of 37%. So that's, those are disturbing numbers. So what's happening, what's going on in this population? Could be many things, like I said before. Again, Native students are more likely to attend public institutions like the University of Arizona, ASU, NAU, more so than private institutions like Harvard or Dartmouth. So 45%, are in public institutions, and then 38% in public two-year colleges. And this could also be tribal colleges. They're public two-year. Yeah, many of them are public two-year, though some of them are going 4-year and into graduate. And in tribal colleges, because they're located in Native communities and they're founded on particular tribal cultures, tribal cultures and traditions, you see that the majority of their enrollment is Natives. When you compare to what's happening in public institutions. So we know, when you look at the experiences, based upon all that stuff I just talked about, we know that finances, is something that is important to Native students. Over about 64% of Native students receive some form of federal Title IV aid in 2017, 2018. And that's compared to 59% of all students. This is like Pell Grant, student loans. So finances are an issue for Native students in order to experience higher education. They have to have these kinds of help, but they also have tribal scholarships are also out there, but that varies according to tribes and how much they pay. But usually, like I said before, these financial aid packages really don't cover everything. There's still all these other expenses that make it hard for Native students, and so sometimes they end up having to work. But also some of the issues, finances is an issue, so you have to have some kind of financial thing in order to go to college. If you don't, that may, put you out of the college entrance. Also, another challenge, for Native students in higher education is that these mainstream white colleges are white spaces. They're Western, institutions. They're based upon that culture and those traditions. And so, sometimes that is hard for Native people to adjust to if they're not used to being, in a kind of a white space. And so, those present challenges for Native students because it's different, because, many times tribal beliefs and tribal ways are different from the Western way. Again, they attend public four-year institutions, more males than females, but also, in these institutions, a lot of times you don't have an appreciation for Native or indigenous cultures and traditions. So, that could then, affect how you feel about being in that space. Do you feel comfortable in that space? When you take classes and there's nothing about indigenous, anything in it, and there's no Native students, so it could make you feel like, you don't belong here, or that you're uncomfortable in a white institution. So, those things are sometimes issues for the experiences of Native students. Also, academic preparation. If you sometimes go to a school on a reservation or in Native communities, sometimes you don't those schools don't offer advanced placement courses, or they don't offer college prep courses. So that can affect, how you do in college and how you're prepared for college if you don't have those kinds of things. And that's not, the student's fault. That's that's school's fault. Schools don't provide that. A lot of times they don't have the resources to do it. And so, you have to deal with, sometimes making those adjustments academic. So academics can be, a challenge sometimes. Of course, we know all of these, sexism still exists, racism still exists in higher education and in these white institutions. There's still naming going on, that people, have stereotypes about Native students, Native people, think of you as, lazy or stoic, or, these stereotypes that are out there that sometimes non-Native people have, and sometimes that can be hard to deal with in these institutions. Though, there's been some progress on that, but it's still there. And then also, that as Native students, you have family obligations, you have tribal obligations, sometimes community obligations. And this sometimes, can be challenging, especially if your institution is not sensitive to these kinds of things. And, your professors will, not let you leave for a ceremony or a special something and don't make compensations for that. That can be difficult, but that still exists too. And so, these are some of the experiences that I think that Native students are still experiencing in different degrees, of course. And then, if you run across biases and naming and some difficulty maybe with academics, maybe you feel, it affects your sense of belonging. Do you belong in college sometimes? If I don't, do well, does that mean that I don't belong here? So sometimes it affects us mentally and what we think about ourselves, unless we have some support, and many institutions have support now. They didn't have a lot when I was in school, but they are, we do have, academic support now, and you're in a program, right now in Native SOAR that provides you with some support and encouragement. Those things didn't always exist, so that helps with that sense of belonging. Because you do belong here. You have a place in higher education. And this constant negotiation, I think of, and Amanda Tully talks about this in that book that you're reading from, about, you're always having to negotiate, living in a Native world and a non-Native world. And it's not just necessarily two worlds, it's multiple worlds, because you're always having to negotiate, depending on where you are and how do you react to this and that in those environments. But this came from Amanda's book too, and she talked about this declaration of Native purpose in higher ed. And these are things that that I think we need to remember, is that Native students have a right to higher education. They have a right to attend college and universities of their choice. And colleges and universities have the duty to recognize and acknowledge that college campuses reside on original homelands of Indigenous people. This is what different colleges and universities have, but they need to go beyond that too. College and universities have the duty to incorporate indigenous knowledge for Native students to survive and thrive. Provide that. It needs to be incorporated. Hopefully, a Native perspective can be integrated into many classes because Natives are citizens of this country too, and their history is a part of the history of this country. And have places like NASA where on college campuses where it fosters the sense of belonging and importance to their campus community. Native students belong here. And also colleges and universities have a duty to make visible, to advocate and empower Native students' degree attainment. Try to help them reach the goal of getting that, of graduating. It's not enough to recruit you but the ultimate goal is to graduate. And then we, need to support Native people by listening and learning about it, and engaging with Native students, staff, and faculty. College staff and professionals need to do this. Senior leadership in higher education must make commitment to do systematic level work that benefits Native students' college advancement. So when you look at the policies, just the system, how you make policies that support Native students, that encourage degree attainment. And again, uphold tribal sovereignty because, our nations are sovereign. What does that mean? And when universities deal with tribals, deal with them as, in this meaningful government to government way, have relationships. So these things will all make Native students, I think, feel more comfortable and that they belong at in higher education. Any comments? I covered a lot in a short period of time.
You did.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Hi, Dr. Fox. This is Ruth, a graduate assistant at the Native SOAR. Thank you for your presentation and for sharing your experiences and your knowledge with our group. I think we are run out of time, but I don't know if we can take just one little comment or question if there is one here.
Okay. Anybody?
Yep.
So you mentioned that you've dealt with.
You can come closer, I think, so she can listen to you.
So you mentioned that you dealt with the sexism by like the professors. How did you, I guess, overcome that, and become as successful as you are today?
I think I just didn't let it get to me. I knew that wasn't true, what they were saying and how they were treating me. It's just like I didn't accept the fact that women couldn't do chemistry. It just challenged me, And I had support. The way I was raised was that way, that, there's always going to be barriers and there's going to be people that don't understand you, but you can overcome that. So I had that kind of value in myself. So I just, went on. I heard it, but I didn't agree with it. And it challenged me to do well in chemistry. And so I did. I passed chemistry. And in my life, I look at that. There are barriers, but there are ways to deal with it. You can find ways to deal with it. Sometimes they don't always work out the best, but you learn from it, learn from those challenges so that if it happens the next time, you can handle it. But my family was a support system. So when those things happen, I would talk to them and they would encourage me. My dad had a saying that in the Comanche that you never give up. Your Comanches are strong people, and you can overcome it. And that's just the attitude I've had my whole career. That doesn't mean that I haven't been, experienced some bad things, and at the time, you think it's the worst thing that could happen to you. But sometimes if you try to work through it and learn from it, sometimes it puts you in a better place. So it's just my attitude about, dealing with challenges.
Well, Dr. Fox, we just really want to say that we're grateful. It's me, I'm talking, hi.
Okay.
But just wanted to say thank you for, persisting and for pursuing the path in higher education. You have inspired generations of Native scholars that have gone on from this place and beyond. And so we're just super grateful that we get to learn from you and hear about your lived experience. So thank you so much for joining us. And this is me giving you a virtual hug. I miss you.
Right.
All right. Take care, Dr. Fox. We'll connect soon.
Okay, thank you. And good luck, everyone.